The Philadelphia Eagles are just about ready to get the season started, playing against the Green Bay Packers, and they are playing not in Philly or in Green Bay, but in Brazil instead, and not everybody seems too excited about it.
What are your thoughts on playing in Brazil, going this great distance to play a game?
No comment.
But in this video, I will break down everything you need to know about the Eagles, the Packers, how they match up, and what I think will happen.
You want the truth? You can't handle the truth.
So starting off, the Eagles offense, how does it look? So from my point of view, honestly, it looks amazing. Should be a top 3 offense in the NFL. There is no excuse other than an injury for the Eagles offense not to be top 3. So going position by position, start off, you have Jalen Hurts. 2 years ago, he was almost the MVP of the NFL if he just didn't get injured. Last year, it was a bit of a down year. However, with an extremely stale offense, he still arguably put up top 10 numbers in the NFL. I know a lot of people thought how the Eagles fell apart last year and Jalen Hurts fell apart last year, but they actually scored the 7th most points in the NFL, and that's with them falling apart. Now, if you take off the second half of the year, just look at the first half of the year. We're going to be doing the opposite with the Packers because these two teams had opposite seasons pretty much. But the first half of the year, Jalen Hurts was an MVP frontrunner. He was the number 1 most likely player to win MVP. Their offense was a top 3 offense in the NFL until they had their collapse. Their collapse was so great that they fell down to the 7th highest scoring offense in the NFL. Honestly, not that bad. Looking in review, it felt terrible at the time, but the offense was not the problem. We'll get to the problem later on. But Jalen Hurts is definitely a top 10 quarterback in the NFL and could arguably be around number 5. Then running back. Huge addition this year to the running back room. We go from Swift, who was very good last year. Don't get me wrong, Swift was good. But Saquon is a whole new level of potential. He can break off touchdown runs that Swift simply could not do. Now, it did cost a lot of money, and I'm not saying Saquon is better at everything. There are certain times where Swift may even be the better running back at a specific situation. But overall, home run hitting plays, Saquon unquestionably is better. He is a top 5, top 10 running back in the NFL.
It's a man's game tonight now, you know that.
He also is an excellent pass blocker and an excellent receiving running back, which will bring a whole new option to the offense. Now, don't get me wrong, Swift was good at catching the ball too, but Hurts just didn't throw it to him. I just have to hope, and we all have to hope, as Eagles fans, if you are an Eagles fan, that Kellen Moore and Jalen Hurts have gotten together and they went, oh, you know what? We actually will throw the ball to the running back. As long as that happens, Saquon can catch it and can make a lot of big plays. Whole new dynamic to the offense. Then wide receivers. This room is better than it has been the past few years. And that's hard to say because it's been excellent the past few years. But A.J. Brown, I can't say anything. He's top 3 or top 4 wide receiver in the NFL. Devontae Smith, of course, can't say anything. He's top 15 in the NFL, which is amazing for your second wide receiver.
Nobody can beat them.
There are very few teams whose best corner can guard A.J. Brown. There are fewer teams whose second best corner can guard Devontae Smith. And then it just gets worse because with Jahan Dotson, the new wide receiver that the Eagles just traded for, they did spend a lot on him, more than I think they should have. But who cares at this point? We have him, it's done. Move on. He is an excellent wide receiver 3. There's no team whose third corner should be guarding Jahan Dotson. Jahan Dotson should be a wide receiver 2 on most teams. So having him as number 3, this offense is just loaded. And not to mention, yes, he is wide receiver 3, but he may be target number 5. He's behind the 2 wide receivers, behind Saquon, and then behind this tight end, Dallas Goedert, who has always been underrated, a little injury ridden, but he can block, he can catch, and he can get yards after the catch. So he has everything needed to be an all-pro tight end if he can just put it together and stay healthy for the year. So those top 5 players, those weapons, are the best in the NFL in my opinion. And then finally, the offensive line. So the offensive line is a little bit worse than it was last year. You don't have Jason Kelce, of course. So that is a big hole in the offense. You move Cam Jurgens to center. You have to replace him at right guard. And Mekhi Becton has won that role, giving the Eagles one of the biggest offensive lines ever. And full of talent. There's still all pros on there. There's still Pro Bowlers on there. But it is not as proven as it has been the past few years. I still think it'll be very good. Still top 5, still top 10. But it might not be the best offensive line in the NFL like it has been the previous few years. Then on the other side of the ball, who the Eagles offense will be going against, of course, the Packers defense. This defense is an okay defense. It's not bad, but it's not great. So their defensive line is average. They get some sacks, they get a decent amount, and they play the pass fairly well, and overall points fairly well. So this Packers defense is not what I would call a terrible defense. They have a lot of solid players, with their best player, in my opinion, being Jair Alexander. Of course, I'm just kind of going all over the place on this Packers defense. But Jair Alexander, in my opinion, their corner, is the best player on the Packers defense. Their passing defense last year was good. Not elite, not the Jets defense, but very good. For their turnovers, it was a decent amount. A decent amount of turnovers, an acceptable amount. It wasn't embarrassing. They also didn't lead the league. The weakness of the Packers defense was running the ball. And it has always been the Packers' weakness the past few years. So, Saquan Barkley in the offensive line and Jalen Hurts running the ball versus the Packers' running defense is a big matchup in this game. One way the Eagles could win this is just by running the ball over and over and over again, getting some breakaway touchdown runs maybe, and just wearing out this Packers defense. But while the Packers defense, as I said, is a pretty decent passing defense, I'm not saying that they can handle the Eagles' passing offense. While Alexander is a really good corner, and he has even shut down players such as Justin Jefferson in the past, it's not an easy matchup going against A.J. Brown one-on-one. So that's one that A.J. Brown could win. That's one that the Eagles' passing offense could win. That is going to be quite the matchup of the Eagles' passing offense versus the Packers' passing defense. And I personally am really high on Kellen Moore and the whole Eagles' offense. I think they'll find ways to score a decent amount of points, maybe upper 20s, like 28, maybe 31 points against this Packers defense. The over-under for this game is 48.5, and the Eagles are supposed to win by 2.5 points. So Vegas agrees that the Eagles could score about 28 points in this game. I'm not saying anything crazy in this video, at least not yet. If you like this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing, but back to the video. Now on to the Green Bay Packers offense versus the Eagles defense. So Jordan Love, of course, is everybody's favorite quarterback in the NFL right now, it seems like. He has been getting so much coverage, so much press for having an excellent season last year, especially the excellent second half of the last season. And he did play very well. I'm not going to take anything against him. I don't personally think he's proven enough to be seen as a top 5 quarterback in the NFL like some people act like he is. I think Jalen is more proven. You may say the peak performance from each of them, maybe Jordan Love's is higher, but if I'm picking a random game, currently I'm going to pick Jalen Hurts in this matchup. And that might be a bit of a hot take, but I don't think it should be. I know Jordan Love played excellent for most of the playoffs last year, but you just look 2 years ago, and Jalen Hurts played excellent in the Super Bowl. So the Packers, of course, quarterback is solid. Running back room, they pretty much only have Josh Jacobs, don't really have anyone else. Of course, Josh Jacobs is a very good running back, a very different running back than Saquon Barkley. He's more of a power back, get 5 to 10 yards at a time, versus Saquon Barkley is more of like 1-2, 60. So there's some preference there, but Jacobs is a very good running back. However, last year, he wasn't that good last year. And while the Packers did pay him a lot of money, they only gave him a 1-year deal, essentially. They can cut him at the end of this year. So that shows maybe his market wasn't quite as good as Saquon Barkley, who had a 3-year deal. So far, these two positions, Eagles, Packers, both really good. Honestly, some of the best in the NFL. If I'm ever saying Eagles are way better than the Packers, or Packers are way better than the Eagles, it's because these are two excellent teams, so I have to compare them somehow. Onto the wide receiver room. So the Packers probably have the deepest bench of wide receivers in the NFL. They have like 5 guys who are good, potentially really good NFL wide receivers, and they're all young. Who knows what's going to happen? I know the fantasy community has been stumped as to which wide receiver to pick. It's who knows. But what you do have to know is that somebody's going to be really good, or they're all really good. This will be really hard for a defense to cover because there's so many options. The one difference, though, is while their depth is even better than the Eagles at wide receiver, they don't have nearly the peak. They don't have an A.J. Brown, and I would argue they don't have a Devontae Smith. They might have some players that you can argue by the end of this year will be seen as better than Devontae Smith, but as of right now, they don't have a Devontae Smith. So, honestly, so far, as an Eagles fan, I think they have an edge in this one. Onto the tight end. While the Packers' tight ends are no joke, and much like the wide receiver room, they do have multiple options. But they don't have a top 5 or top 10 tight end in the NFL on this roster. Of course, once again, potential. This team, maybe next year, not this year, not 24, but 25, could easily be the best team in the NFL with how much talent is so young. I think they're one of the youngest teams in the NFL. So having a quarterback already locked up, they could be really good this year, but they could be better next year. So through the weapons, I think the Eagles are the best, like the best in the NFL. The Packers, I think, are 5th or 6th or 7th in the NFL. So edge to the Eagles. And then for the offensive line, the Packers' offensive line is always good. It's probably about 10th in the NFL versus the Eagles' 5th in the NFL. It's very solid, and I think we'll put up a decent performance against the Eagles' defense. And then the opposite side of the ball, the Eagles' defense. So last year, the Eagles' defense, especially the second half of the year, was one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Even the entire year, they were one of the worst defenses in the NFL. They had a strong running defense the first half and were really bad at running defense the second half of the year. But their passing defense was bad the entire year. And a lot has changed. Vic Fangio, potential Hall of Fame defensive coordinator, has taken over the DC job. He's replaced 2 people who were both really bad at being defensive coordinators and did not know what they were doing, especially Matt Patricia. So not even talking about the players, the coaches has had a huge upgrade for the Eagles defense. Their defensive line is not as good as it used to be. They have lost Hassan Reddick and they have lost Fletcher Cox. I don't know if this means a lot to you or not, but that is losing their 2 best defensive linemen from last year. So this is a big deal. and it could easily struggle this year. Their defensive line is not what it used to be. It's not the 2 years ago getting, around 70 sacks. That's not going to happen this year. They might not be bad, but it's not an excellent defensive line that we're used to. But don't get me wrong, still could be good. The Eagles have Carter going into his second year. He almost won Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, and then lost it towards the end of the year because he kind of got burnt out a little bit. But he is one of the most promising defensive tackles in the NFL. It's Jordan Davis, who is a bit of a mauler. He's huge, if you don't know, giant. And the first half of last year played very well and then got out of shape and kind of fell apart. But for this game, this first game of the year, he's going to be in shape. I can almost guarantee you that. So he will be very good as well. Really good in the run game since he's a monster. Then Milton Williams is the third defensive tackle. He's kind of underrated, but a lot of teams and coaches think he's very good. On their edges, there is Sweat and there's Huff. Now, neither one of these have ever really been a team's 1A defensive end. They have promise. Sweat has gotten a bunch of sacks in his career. Huff has gotten a bunch of sacks as a third down rusher. They're not proven. I guess Sweat is proven, but he fell off a bit last year. But they're not that proven. The defensive line is just not quite what it used to be. And I just don't know how many sacks the Eagles defensive line would do against the Packers offense. The linebackers on the Eagles has gotten better. Nakobe Dean, maybe. Zach Bond, Devon White, maybe. These are okay linebackers, but they're not great. They are better than last year, but they're just not great. What has greatly improved on the Eagles that has me really excited is the backfield. Their safeties appears to be solid with Reed Blankenship and C.D. Gardner-Johnson. So safeties are good. Maybe not top tier, but are good. Their corners are deep. Kind of like the Packers wide receiver room, but the Eagles cornerback room is very deep. Slay is still the best one. And then Quentin Mitchell, the first round rookie pick, is likely to be the starting cornerback. But there's also depth corners such as Keely Ringo, Isaiah Rodgers, Eli Ricks even, and then of course the second round pick, Cooper DeJean. So the Eagles defense is very different than what you might be used to. Not as many sacks, in my opinion. I think the run defense will be solid, but the pass defense on the back end will be much better. So it'll be a very interesting matchup between the Packers' good wide receivers and the Eagles' good corners. That's what this game may come down to. Can the Eagles figure out and stop the Packers' offense that improved greatly throughout the season last year? And I do think the Packers will have some success. I think they'll have some big plays where they just get maybe a long 50-yard touchdown. But overall, more than not, I think the Eagles will do a bend but not break, maybe let them to the 30 and then give up a field goal or something like that, and we'll let them end up scoring about 17 to 24 points. So I believe this game will likely be Eagles 31, Packers 24. Eagles cover, Eagles win, start the year off strong. But there is one thing that could change all of this, and that is the special teams. The Eagles special teams on kickoff returns have struggled in the past, and the Packers have had a good kickoff return unit. So with this being one of the first games of the year, if the Packers get a kickoff return touchdown, this could change everything. And this would not surprise me that much. So, anyways, what are your thoughts? Leave them down below. I believe Eagles win in a moderate level victory. I don't think it will be a nail biter, but I don't think it will be a blowout. So, yeah, leave your thoughts down below. Like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you later.